going on, Vikings fans? Welcome to the Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and coming up on today's show, I want to go over 5 cornerbacks that the Vikings could bring in before training camp that gets underway July 27th. We got 1 massive trade and 4 free agents I could see Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, possibly bringing in before training camp gets underway. But before we get into that, guys, help us to reach 26,500 subscribers here on the channel. We only need 35 more of you guys. I would love to hit this before Sunday this weekend. So if you guys could help us out, and plus you're just going to stay more informed, on your Minnesota Vikings. So hit that subscribe and lock us in. Let's dive into it. So, there's no doubt that cornerback in my opinion, is the number 1 need on this Vikings roster. I like a guy like Byron Murphy, but I would prefer him more as, your second option at the cornerback spot. The free agent pickup of Shaq Griffin, I think that was great. But again, I would like him more as cornerback 3. And if you're just looking at internal options here, you're banking on a guy like Mekhi Blackman and Caleb Evans, if they could take that next step. Andrew Booth has been a disappointment so far, but he's got some top-end talent. Keep your eyes out on UDFA, Dwight McLeathern out of Arkansas. Him and Byron Murphy were working after practice every single day during the OTA and minicamp period. So that was cool to see, but there's no doubt that cornerback position for the Vikes is a dire need. And the biggest name we're going to talk about today, how about Marshon Lattimore, the age 28 corner for the New Orleans Saints, is he could be on his way out with the Saints in cap hell heading into the next season. It was actually Jeremy Fowler who connected the Minnesota Vikings to the former All-Pro cornerback by saying this: the Saints are projected to be a league-high $88.2 million over the 2025 cap, which is actually more than double of any team in the NFL. Trading Lattimore would present the Saints with much-needed flexibility. A former first-rounder out of Ohio State, Lattimore has a reasonable cap hit of $14.6 million in 2024, but that figure set to rise to $31.4 million the following season and $28.6 million in 2026. From a roster perspective, blueprinting a deal for Lattimore now should be a far more realistic option than it was pre-draft. New Orleans traded up in the second round to select cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry, a confident and fluid man corner who could be ready to start when September rolls around, and for much cheaper than Lattimore would demand. And listen, the Vikings could afford Lattimore. I think that's his biggest, red flag right now is that contract, but the Vikings have $26 million still to spend this year. They have $54 million next season, so there's definitely a situation where the Vikings could go and land Marshon Lattimore in a blockbuster trade. The trade idea Fowler did throw out, though, it was a 5th-round pick for next season in 2025 and a 6th-round pick in the 2026 draft. So, right now the Vikings only have 3 draft picks in the 2025 draft with 1 first and 2 fifths. So, giving up one of those fifths, I wouldn't hate it too much, but with where the Vikings are at, giving up any type of draft capital is definitely something you would prefer not to do. But if you could land a top corner like Lattimore, I would be all in. And then plus, that would just bump everybody down the pecking order. It would be Lattimore, cornerback 1, Byron Murphy 2, Shaq Griffin 3, and then you have guys like Blackman and Evans fight it out for that cornerback 4, as they could be good rotational pieces, for that unit. But you guys let me know. What say you? Would you trade for Marshon Lattimore? Important question, but let's just say it takes a 5th and a future 3rd-round pick to get it done. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Give me a T for trade or give me a P for pass. Now, this would be my top option for the Vikings if they're going to address this cornerback position, heading into training camp. And that would be Stephon Gilmore, who, he is 33 years old. He's not the same player who won that Defensive Player of the Year award back with the New England Patriots, but he still had a solid year for the Cowboys last season. The stats, pretty solid. 13 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, allowed a quarterback rating of 83.3 when targeted, solid completion percentage allowed of 54.9. And, we could talk about the on the field impact that he would have, but also I just like him as a veteran in this group. I think, I don't think we give that enough attention as NFL fans and just NBA fans or whatever sport it may be, is, we don't talk about it enough, the off-the-field stuff, in the day in, day out, every single practice, every single, team meeting you have, just to have that veteran corner in Stefan Gilmore. I mean, guys like a Caleb Evans and Mekhi Blackman probably were watching this guy win his depoy when they were in high school or college. So they would just have a already, respect for him, and I think it could be, beneficial to bring him in. But let's talk about Adoree Jackson here, as, this would be a perfect scheme fit for the Minnesota Vikings. And actually, ESPN a couple months ago did link Minnesota to Adoree Jackson. They said this. They said the Vikings drafted cornerback Xaviern Jackson out of Oregon in the 4th round of April's draft. Obviously, that did not end up working out, but they said, but there's still a need at cornerback depth for an aggressive defense. And under coordinator Brian Flores, that will heat up the pocket. Last season, Minnesota led the NFL with a blitz rate of 49.4%. That's a combination of zone and man pressure, which fits the aggressive coverage traits and eyes of Adoree Jackson. And listen, there's no doubt he's a perfect scheme fit for what Flores likes to do. He asks his cornerbacks to, step up in the run game and tackle. He does that, and Adoree's just one of those guys. He wants to go man-to-man. He wants to go mano-a-mano, no safety help over the top. And with what Flores likes to do, it's going to be a perfect fit if Adoree is brought in. Now, injuries have definitely plagued him since he was a first-round pick for the Tennessee Titans a couple seasons ago. But, Adoree, he's still got some talent, man. And I think, if you would just get a new scene, obviously the New York Giants weren't a too successful football team the past couple of seasons, but, played in 14 games last year, had 8 PBUs, 1 interception, 63 tackles. It would just be a solid option for the Vikings, but this wouldn't be a needle mover by any means. This would just be a, get another body in that room, and hopefully he ends up working out. Now, talking about a guy that, is a perfect scheme fit with Brian Flores and is already familiar with him, what about Xaviern Howard, who had 10 interceptions his last season actually with Brian Flores, and he's 31 years old, already has that connection with Flo, and, this would be a pretty seamless fit, especially when you're bringing in these guys right before training camp, starts this late in the offseason. You don't want them, having to dive into a complete new playbook, a complete new defense. Xavier's already played in that, and he's already, thrived under the Brian Flores style of defense. Now, the thing is with Howard is, yes, he is 31 years old, coming off, a down year for the Miami Dolphins, and I think he would be a guy where, again, it's not a needle mover like a Marshon Lattimore would be, where it's like, then we're talking about this Vikings cornerback group in a completely different light. Like, we're talking about them possibly being a top 15 unit in the league. Xaviern Howard would just be a guy similar to Adoree Jackson, just bring another camp body in there. I will also say I think he's also got a lot of off-the-field impact for the Vikings since he knows exactly what Flores likes to do. He can help, articulate that to the younger corners on this roster. But you guys see the stats last season. Obviously, not his best year in the NFL, but he was still pretty productive. 12 PBUs, 1 interception, a lot of quarterback rating of 87 flat. So, Xaviern Howard, I think would be another great option for the Vikes. But let's talk about a former Minnesota Viking, and his birthday was actually yesterday, so happy late birthday to Patrick Peterson. But he did just turn 34 years old, and, the idea of bringing back Pat Pete, like I could make the same argument for him of, the off-the-field impact, like the day in, day out of practice that, I think could be great for this young core, but maybe I just had PTSD from the Giants-Vikings wildcard game from a couple years ago where he got lit up by Isaiah Hodgins. So I would probably be good on Patrick Peterson. I would rather go the lights of, going all in on Marshon Lattimore, signing up, one of the other 3 corners we talked about, like Xaviern Howard, Gilmore or Adoree Jackson. But you guys let me know. I just gave you guys 5 options. You guys just got to give me one. Name a cornerback the Vikings should bring in. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you guys want more around your Minnesota Vikings on Twitter, that's my handle right there, @PatSeeps. Give me a follow over there, and I'll give you guys a follow back. But just thank you guys so much for supporting the show in the dog days of the offseason. Cannot wait for training camp to get going in about 2.5 weeks from now. So stay tuned for that, but we'll see you guys next time. As always, SKOL Vikes.